Okay, welcome back. We're kind of sort of on page 176, but since they built theirs different than ours, we don't have an automatic menu, so we're having to do it by hand. So they already had a thing called an onCreateOptions menu method, which we don't have. And so I'm going to go in here and through the magic of copying and pasting, I've created an onCreateMenu guy. And of course, it's never heard of these things. Okay, cool. Now what this is going to mean that when this thing fires, it's going to create that guy, right? So a menu now is created. It doesn't actually do anything yet, but it is created. In fact, let's just go look at it to see what it looks like. So I'm going to stop the application, run the application, and let's go see what it looks like. See, I got the three little dots now. And it now says pick color and pick size. They don't actually do anything yet, but that's not the point. Cool. All right, so next we're going to do is we're going to write a method that actually goes in and listens for that menu and then does something. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just stop that guy. It just kind of makes sense. Okay, cool. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an onOptions item selected. I know it's a mouthful. Here we go. So it's going to be public boolean onOptions item selected, and I'm going to use menu item, and I'm going to call it item. And of course you can probably imagine right off the bat, oh, it does know what that is. That's amazing. I'm kind of surprised. Okay. So here's what I would typically do. I would use a switch statement typically, but that's just me. A switch, and then we're going to switch on the item. Helps SWTCH. The item's ID. Okay, so I just want to get the item ID. Get item ID. Okay, that's my switch statement now. Okay, so one of the cases is going to be for, dang it. So it's r dot, remember all this good stuff? So it's r dot ID, and there's one, should be one called color menu, right? Cool. And then do something. And then another one, of course, would be case r dot ID size menu. And then do something else and break. And then since this is a Boolean, I have to return something. I'm going to return true. Okay, so what is it you're going to have it do? I don't know. Let's do another toast. Let me grab a toast I can play with real quick. Grab a toast guy, and I don't know, we'll make it say pick color. You picked a color. And then we'll go down to here and we'll do it again. And this time it's you picked a size. All right, let's make sure this thing works. Boink. And then I go to here. Got to wait for all the messages to slow down because, okay, now that it's quiet. Hey, I picked a color. Hey, I picked a size. Okay, is all this kind of making sense? So menus are kind of cool. We're going to use them in upcoming assignments. Kind of sort of makes sense. Okay, page 177, they go back to looking at the structure of the Java code one more time. Now we have upcoming chapters that's going to go into the Java world one more time, but extends means I'm inheriting. Now most of the time, well, in the old days, you would inherit from something called activity, but we chose to inherit from app-compat activity, which is a backwards compatibility library for older versions of Android. So you can use all these things that we're talking about, and if it exists in Android, no problem. If it doesn't exist in Android, then app compatibility will bring all that stuff to the table so that you can just continue to write your applications. That's why 99.8% of the stuff we write will work on every single device, because we're using this app compatibility thing. Okay, now you should be familiar with these terms. We're going to talk about them again in the next chapter, about importing a class library, okay? Extending a class when you're inheriting, yeah. And creating our own classes. Yeah, you should remember all those kind of terms. Now the next thing we're going to be talking about is very, very strange. And that is, if I have a variable inside my application that I want to survive being shut down and brought back up, I need to do something. Because the only things that are currently being stored when my application gets shut down and restarted is the stuff that's in an edit text box. Okay? That sounds a little odd, but that's the only thing that exists that way. So what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to go in and add yet another set of methods that we can use to tweak what we want stored. Okay. So I'm going to change our application a tiny bit. Instead of having all this stuff the way it is, I'm going to have it display, well, hang on, one thing at a time. I'm going to create me a variable, an integer variable called count. Okay, cool. I'm going to set it equal to 0. All right, cool. And then what I'm going to do here is instead of just making this toast message like we've been doing, I'm also going to show this inside that text view. That's the reason why we did this thing at the very beginning. So, and then I'm going to say append, and then I'm going to say count plus plus on create, like that. Okay? In other words, as it goes through, it's going to count the number of times this has happened. So I should get a list in numerical order. So give me a second to put this on all of the rest of the items. All right, I fixed it now by putting new lines in there. Let's try this one more time. And so I've got on create, on start, on resume. Cool. Let's bring up something. And it says, oh, we went to pause. So I did that. I want to switch back. I want to go back to my guy. And now I've gone through a create, a stop, a pause, a start, a restart, and a resume. So you see how this has gone through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No trouble at all, right? So I'm going to rotate my screen. And wait a minute. I went from stop to resume, but instead of going to 9, it went to 2. What on earth is going on? Why doesn't it preserve the numbering scheme here? So if I go to here and then pop back, right? Like, wait a minute, it's starting over. How come it didn't work? How come my counter got blown away? Ooh, now that is a very good question that we're going to deal with in coming up soon. Let's tackle some of that right now. Okay, do you remember we start talking about the pause and the resume guy? Well, there's a very, very specific thing that you can do for trying to store data. So here we go. So I'm going to do an override. And this time I'm going to override something called, don't worry about too much what all this means. I'm going to say protected void on save instance state. And I'm going to pass to it a thing called a bundle. And I'm just going to call it out state. Okay. Protected void on save instance state. Yes. And then one of the things we're going to have to do, of course, is call the super for it. On save instance state with the out state. That kind of makes sense. And then while I'm in the saving state, I want to record that particular variable called count. All right, so here's how you do it. It's a little weird. I'm going to say out state, and say put int, and then, well, come on, put int. Come on. Put I, capital I-N-T. Put an integer. And so what are you going to call this thing? I'm going to call it counter. However it's spelled. And then the name of the actual value of the variable, which is counter. So what this is going to do, this is going, it's not called counter? What the hell is it called? Called count. Sorry. Cool. Now what this does is when the machine transitions to one of those pause states, it's going to save this guy because this guy has not been saved. So we're going to do it again, except this time we're going to do the opposite, the on restore guy. So here we go. So on override. And just like before, we're going to do protected void on restore instance state. And I'm going to say bundle, and this time I'm going to call it, how about in state? That kind of makes sense. And then of course I'm going to have to call the super. That kind of makes sense, doing whatever it's supposed to do. And then I want to get mine back. Now this is a little weird. I need to ask if the state is empty. Remember how that first time through we do a resume? Remember that? You know, we do a start and then we do a resume immediately. Well, sometimes there's nothing to resume. So I need to check to see, is there something to resume? So here's how you do that. We're going to say if in state is not equal to null. Okay, like that. That means there is something to do. Okay? Then we're going to say count is equal to in state dot get int counter. That helps if you spell it right. Okay, so what this has done is this is when that transition occurs in the pause and the resume, it's going to go here, it's going to save those guys. So we're going to run this one more time. And then I'm going to rotate my device. And I'm going to rotate him back. And the counter is preserved. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so this is a tough topic. So in addition to learning about how the state works, you need to figure out how to store other information that is not normally saved. Okay, so now, does that mean after I absolutely positively close this guy off and completely destroy him, and like 6 months later I bring this guy up, is this stuff going to be there? No, that's a different kind of saving that we'll talk about in an upcoming chapter. Okay, we have reached the end of chapter 6. So, I know this was a long one and there's an awful lot of technical details you're going to have to master, but this is a good topic. All right, see you guys next time.